Locusta, the Empress of Poison. This is history in the shadow. If you guys like our videos, then please subscribe our channel. In the shadows of Nero's palace, a woman held more power than senators and generals combined. With just a few drops from her vials, she could topple emperors and reshape history. Meet Locusta, the master poisoner who killed for Rome's most ruthless rulers, and whose deadly knowledge made her both invaluable and incredibly dangerous. Thunder crash. Fade to black. The year was 54 AD, and the Roman Empire stood at crossroads. In the opulent corridors of the imperial palace, where marble gleamed under flickering torches and the scent of incense couldn't quite mask the underlying tension, a woman named Locusta was about to change the course of history with nothing more than a handful of mushrooms. But Locusta wasn't just any woman. Born in Gaul, she possessed a mind as sharp as any Roman blade and a knowledge of plants that could kill or cure with equal precision. Her reputation had spread through whispered conversations in Rome's darkest corners. She was the poisoner without equal, the woman who could deliver death in a cup of wine or a plate of delicacies. Agrippina the Younger, mother of the future Emperor Nero, had summoned Locusta for a task that would shake the foundations of Rome itself. Emperor Claudius, Agrippina's husband and Nero's stepfather, stood in the way of her son's path to absolute power. The empress needed him gone, but it had to appear natural. A heart attack, perhaps, or food poisoning. Nothing that could be traced back to her. Locusta studied Agrippina with calculating eyes. This wasn't her first commission from the imperial family, and it wouldn't be her last. She had already established herself as the go-to expert for Rome's elite when they needed their problems to simply disappear. Her workshop, hidden in the Subura district among the common people, was filled with rare herbs, exotic plants, and carefully preserved animal venoms from across the empire. "Tell me about the emperor's habits," Locusta said, her voice steady and professional. "What does he eat? Who serves him? When is he most vulnerable?" Agrippina leaned forward, her jeweled fingers drumming against the marble table. "Claudius loves mushrooms, particularly the boletus variety. His favorite dish is prepared by his taster, Locusta, a freedman named Halotus." The poisoner smiled slightly. Food was always the easiest method, intimate, trusted, and when done correctly, virtually undetectable. But this case required special consideration. Claudius was notoriously paranoid about poison, employing multiple tasters and changing his eating habits regularly. This would require her most sophisticated approach. Over the following days, Locusta worked with surgical precision. She cultivated a special strain of death-cap mushrooms, carefully extracting their toxic compounds and concentrating them into a nearly odorless, tasteless liquid. But the real genius lay not in the poison itself, but in its delivery method. She approached Halotus, the emperor's trusted servant, not with threats or promises of gold, but with information. Locusta had learned that Halotus had a sick daughter, dying from a wasting disease that Roman physicians couldn't cure. She offered him a trade, a genuine cure for his daughter's illness in exchange for his cooperation in a matter of imperial importance. The night of October 12th, 54 AD, Emperor Claudius sat down to what would be his final meal. The dining room was filled with the usual suspects, senators, advisors, and family members, including young Nero, who watched with carefully concealed anticipation. The emperor's favorite mushroom dish was served with great ceremony, and Claudius, despite his paranoia, trusted Halotus implicitly. But Locusta had been more clever than anyone realized. The mushrooms themselves were harmless. The real poison was in the antidote. When Claudius began to show signs of stomach distress, as was common after rich meals, his personal physician administered what he believed was a harmless remedy for indigestion. Instead, it was Locusta's masterpiece, a secondary poison that would mimic the symptoms of acute food poisoning while causing rapid organ failure. Within hours, the Emperor of Rome was dead. The official cause was listed as accidental mushroom poisoning, and 16-year-old Nero ascended to the throne with his mother as regent. Locusta had successfully orchestrated one of history's most significant assassinations, and her reputation was sealed. But her work was far from over. Nero, now emperor, found himself facing his own problems. His half-brother Britannicus, Claudius's biological son, posed a legitimate threat to his rule. The young man had supporters in the Senate and represented a more stable, traditional path for Rome. Once again, poison would be the solution. This time, Nero came to Locusta personally. The young emperor was fascinated by her methods and insisted on being involved in every step of the process. He wanted something dramatic, something that would send a clear message to any other potential rivals while still maintaining plausible deniability. Locusta developed what she called her feast poison, a compound that would remain completely dormant until activated by wine. Britannicus could eat the same food as everyone else at a public banquet, but when he raised his cup for a toast, death would follow within minutes. The opportunity came during the Saturnalia celebrations of 55 AD. The great hall was filled with Rome's nobility, all gathered to witness what they believed would be a celebration of unity between the imperial brothers. Britannicus, barely 14 years old, sat at the place of honor beside Nero, unaware that his wine had been specially prepared. When the moment came for the traditional toast to the emperor, Britannicus raised his cup along with everyone else. The poison worked exactly as Locusta had designed, fast-acting but appearing to be a sudden seizure or heart failure. The young man collapsed at the table, convulsing briefly before going still. Nero's performance of grief and shock was masterful, and once again, Locusta's work appeared to be nothing more than a tragic natural death. Word of these successes spread through Rome's underground networks, and Locusta found herself with more clients than she could handle. Wealthy merchants wanting to eliminate business rivals, senators seeking to remove political obstacles, even ordinary citizens looking to escape bad marriages, all came seeking her services. But success brought attention, and attention brought danger. Nero's increasingly erratic behavior was making life difficult for everyone in his inner circle, and Locusta found herself walking a tightrope between usefulness and liability. The emperor's paranoia grew with each passing year, and she knew that eventually he might decide she knew too many secrets. Her fears proved justified in 68 AD when Nero's reign finally collapsed. The Senate declared him an enemy of the people, and the emperor fled Rome in disgrace before taking his own life. In the chaos that followed, many of Nero's associates were rounded up and executed. Locusta was among them, but her death was particularly brutal. She was torn apart by wild beasts in the arena, a punishment reserved for the most heinous criminals. Yet even in death, Locusta's legacy lived on. Her methods were studied and refined by future poisoners, and her reputation became legendary. She had proven that in the corridors of power, knowledge was the ultimate weapon, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was the one who appeared least threatening. The woman who had toppled an emperor and shaped the destiny of Rome with nothing more than plants and chemistry had shown that true power didn't always come from armies or wealth. Sometimes it came from understanding the delicate balance between life and death, and knowing exactly how to tip those scales. Her story serves as a reminder that in the brutal world of imperial Rome, survival often depended not on strength or nobility, but on intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect oneself in a world where loyalty was a luxury few could afford. Locusta died as she lived, in service to power, but ultimately consumed by it. Her story reminds us that in the game of empires, even the most skilled players eventually face their final hand.